I'm very pleased to be joined by Dr. Jeffrey Caulfield. He's the author of General Walker and the Murder of President Kennedy. Jeff, thanks for being with me.
You're welcome.
Jeff, your book came out in 2015. How long did it take for you to write that?
10 years,
Wow,
big book.
absolutely. Now that it's been 10 years since it came out, um, where are you seeing the reaction these days? Especially maybe in the last few years. Has it been a little bit different than when the book initially came
Yeah,
out 10 years ago?
there's more acceptance in the last few years. People took the time to digest it. The people who, I hate to say this, the smarter people got it. There's a predominance of people who believe in the myth that the CIA killed Kennedy. That hasn't changed. If you look at conferences and chat rooms, it's all about CIA agents and this and that without a shred of proof, not a shred of proof. So, all of the proof is a mountain of proof. There's so much evidence uh, about the radical right being behind the assassination and Lee Harvey Oswald. It's really beyond dispute at this point for thinking people. But people like to solve crimes, people like the intrigue, and most of the stuff out there is fabricated. It's sort of invented storytelling, some of it plausible, some of it not, most of it not so plausible. I, it's just, you just, it's resistant to any change in the JFK community. So yeah, that's where I'm at, but I sell more. It's now an ebook as well, which is cheap. And I cut the price on the hardcover. So there's really no excuse now. There's a wealth of information, whether you're a CIA did it type of guy or not, the wealth of information there. I mean, a wealth. There's just, I mean, I had to hold back. Believe it or not, people complain about the size of it. Well, that was after I cut it to the bone. And what do you want to cut the good stuff out? I mean, I liken it to like I'm writing a surgical book. And people say, oh, the editor says, oh, it's too long. And people say, that's too long. But what do you want me to cut out? The appendix part or the part where we deal with surgery and the spleen? I mean, how much of that can you, so that's where I'm at.
Was your initial manuscript even longer, or did you cut
Oh,
out?
it was maybe 5% longer.
Okay.
What I did is I put a lot of the dialogue in the manuscript into the end notes because I hated to cut it, but I thought it might be a burden to read it. But I had no, it's the same size as the Warren Commission, same size as the House Select Committee and its volumes, easily. Nobody complained about that. Oh, the Warren Commission is
26
28
volumes.
volumes,
Yeah.
of junk, garbage, pure garbage. So I went ahead and I said, well, this is nobody presented the relevant facts in either of those investigations. And so this was my Warren Commission report, House Select Committee report. This is mine. It deserved to be as big. And it's got all different information. You'll see if people who are not familiar with the work, you'll see, I haven't seen this before. That's what they'll say.
That's
Where
right.
did he get this from?
That's right.
And that's it.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why people would complain about that size. I was actually very excited when I first got it from interlibrary loan before I got my own copy, which has got coffee stains and all that all over it. I refer to it as the Bible because, you can just basically open a page anywhere and just start finding new information. How I've always wondered, how does you a doctor, an ER doctor, even at that, I think.
Yeah.
Um, get into this.
Well, I was a pretty lucky guy. I'm an ER doc, and we did shift work, and we made a fair amount of money. Not, and so what I could do is go part time. I worked different shifts, like 14-hour shifts, twice or three times a week, and then I'd jump on a plane, go to Washington or down south to Dallas and New Orleans. And, I had the money to do it. I had the time to do it. And I would sometimes go to National Archives a couple times a month, stay for 3 days, uh, Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday, and come back Saturday, because that's about all your brain can take of going through millions of files. But yeah, I was a regular visitor. The archivist was very kind to me. She would pull original documents. So if I got some FBI documents, they were signed by Hoover and in ballpoint or in fountain pen, and I'd have all the boxes pulled before I got there. I'd have 20 some boxes, but that's how you do it. Nobody goes. I don't know if anybody goes to the National Archives, but there's a lot of stuff in there. I'll tell you one thing for researchers. When you're going through all these boxes, maybe you want one document about Jack Ruby and gambling or something. But you get this box and you realize that document's not very fulfilling. You start going through other stuff and go, holy moly, stuff I wasn't even looking at. And because it's poorly indexed. I mean, so it was always a treat. It was always a mind blower to go to the National Archives, which I've done on 20 some occasions. And it was a joy, although it was a grind.
Yeah, no, yeah, certainly. Well, you stuck with it. So, Jeff, when you're seeing uh, news cycles, recent news cycles come out about files being released, where do you get excited about that?
I say they're not going to show anything. The files are what they said. They hid them to protect informants. And so you go over some and you go, okay, there's nothing here. All the release files, there's nothing here. And then they say, well, here we got some CIA documents. Well, it doesn't tell you anything. I mean, it just doesn't. It's not there. The proof isn't there. People have to go to their college philosophy or logic professors and say, hey, can you make this deduction? The reasoning here is so poor. It's really not professional for the bulk of the JFK stuff. I mean, there's certain things were great, but most of it's junk, and the stuff that's good is contaminated with junk, and that's how I feel about it.
Jeff, when I first I went on Amazon after I got the first copy from the library and wanted to see, I did not know about this at all. I didn't know your name. I mean, I was really kind of new in the research anyway. But and I won't get into any names, but you mentioned this at the beginning of our talk here. All people need to do are read your Amazon reviews of the book, and they'll probably pick up what I'm talking about. Um, the reaction from the community, this JFK community, which if you don't know about it, it's very intense milieu. Do you have any allies in there, or people who maybe not even allies, but people who've come from a different point of view and have seen your point of view and have actually maybe changed their perspective that they're so intent on holding on to that, I don't know, the CIA did it, but then they see your work and they think, man, maybe I've been barking up the wrong tree here. Have you run into that at all?
No, I haven't had a lot of conversions. I had a guy read it three times. He read the book three times. Called me. Uh, there's a website, the CIA did not do it.
Yeah,
And
Paul
they
Trejo.
they don't feature me. I mean, I'm one of 12 sources, and they go, Caulfield also says the right wing did. And there are people who are sane, but there's a charisma to the CIA doing everything. Right after the Boston Marathon, That was the CIA, and of course Robert Kennedy and King and blah, da, 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 da. It's just they've been doing that on every event. I'm sure the CIA has worked into the Gaza thing somehow. Blah, da, da. It's just because the CIA is so flexible. I mean, they're like Santa Claus. Well, how does Santa Claus come down the chimney if you live in an apartment building? Well, mom tells you, well, he can slide under the door, you know? And these people, it gives you that flexibility. Well, if the CIA, they wouldn't leave any evidence behind if they did it. And so it's no surprise there's no evidence for it because they wouldn't leave any behind. Well, you can't do that. And people don't know the rules of evidence, and it's obvious. So, that's a tough time. I got to say, it's grown in more popularity because of after it was released, it was initial onslaught of people just bitterly condemning everything and lying to condemn the book, just making things up, just dirty ad hominem stuff by a cadre of the CIA did. They were outraged. The CIA people were absolutely outraged at my book, and uh, and I know them personally. I've been in this for a long time, since late 80s, 90s. I know these people. I've been with them. I've eaten dinner. Went to New Orleans with a group of them. And so, anyhow,
Jeff, there's a few names that I want to break down that I didn't know about until I read your book. But there's one name that I think we both connected on, and that's, we're both Cleveland boys, and there's another Cleveland boy who features prominent in the JFK story. David Ferry, was he one of the reasons that you got into this, or did you discover
yeah, it
Ferry?
was. I kept reading and reading and reading. And then I saw, and there was no reference in many of the books to Cleveland. And then I saw Don DeLillo's book. And he said, "Oh, here's a guy from Cleveland who went to Baldwin Wallace College." Well, and I grew up right around there, and then so I started out, and then I went, and Ferry was teacher in the parochial school district of Cleveland, and fascinating guy. I found many of his students, back in the 90s. I would go to the Benedictine, where he taught, and just call up names, and they go, "Oh, hi, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I know Mr. Ferry. Yeah, yeah." And I have a 5 or 6 of those tape recording, and they would tell me about him, what a crazy guy he is. And one of them told me that he had a bunch of students in his car, and he's speeding out of the driveway of Benedictine High School, and he flipped the car over. And it just gives you an idea of his flamboyance, you know. So, yeah, that's how you get in. You got to get in someplace.
There's a name that I would love for you to tell us who this is. I didn't know it, and I'm going to pronounce it wrong. So walk me through this. Who is Hubert Badeau?
Beto.
Beto.
Hubie. We call him, his name is Hubie. Now, let me think, it's been,
Well,
Hubie Beto was, he worked for Bannister one time,
yes.
New Orleans cop.
Well, he specifically, what's really struck me about it was he kind of had this either a program or some kind of project that he did, right? Where he guys like Oswald would go through Beto's department or something as uh, to kind of convince to play a role like he did like for the right, right?
Well, Hubert Beto in 1957, I found a letter, and he said, "I'm grooming
Yeah.
a young man from out of town who to be a false communist, essentially." And it fits the description of Oswald, but you can't really say so. But you got to keep in mind, this is Guy Bannister's um, assistant, and he was in the police department in New Orleans when Bannister was there. Garrison
Yeah.
didn't touch him. Garrison had untouchables. like Kent Courtney. I think he didn't want to touch Ed Butler and Carlos Bunguer especially. He covered up that stuff and for political reasons, I believe. I don't think he's deliberately trying to distort the truth as much as trying to save his life. But yeah, so that was the first grooming. Some guy called me and asked me about the grooming thing. He said, "Well, Oswald was in the Marines." I said, "Well, we don't know when the grooming took place." Um, but anyhow, the classic case of Guy Bannister grooming a false communist was on Jerry Brooks. Now, if you don't know Jerry Brooks, you should, because he was a constant figure at 544 Camp Street, which is with a pamphlet that Oswald was showing off. He was down there for a long time. I mean, I think months and months. And Robert Depew, head of the Minuteman, he was second in command of the Minuteman up in Missouri. And so he's been down there sitting there. It was a satellite office of the Minuteman. Put that, I don't care if you want to put that Brooks was a CIA, and I'm sure somebody put down he was the second in command of the Minutemen, a national well-known militia group wanted to kill Kennedy and take over the country. So, so Brooks in 62, that's how long he'd been there, 62, 63. He's got a desk in there somewhere. And Brooks was a young man, a very young guy, impressionable, a super patriot. He, Bannister said, I want you to impersonate a communist, and I want you to infiltrate the Communist Party. So Brooks had a fit when Bannister said that. He was scared to death. So he went to the FBI and he gave him the story. This Mr. Bannister's trying to make me into a communist, and I don't want to be it. But the funny part, I don't know what happened with that, but later on, I think in 63, he agreed to it, and it's in the book. He says, okay. And then he goes to the head of the Communist Party's in there, and she's suspicious. And everybody, and this is all documented. This was bothersome for him, but he did it. And Oswald did it too, impersonated a communist. And
Yeah.
so that's it's an old trick. It's an old trick. It's like me putting on an Antifa shirt and going down to one of these rallies and go, I'm on Antifa. It's just ridiculous, really, on the face of it. And we
You,
have
you,
communist baiting had a long history in the United States. So if you don't get that, if you don't believe what I said about that 1957 letter, that it sounds compatible with Oswald as the grooming to be a communist, then you can go look at 62 with Jerry Milton Brooks saying, Mr. Bannister's forcing me to be a communist. It was something. I found that actually late in my investigation. But yeah, that's the whole thing. Oswald's not a real communist. He's pretending to be. Well, why would he? Well, he started pretending in 1956. Well, he wasn't planning on killing the Kennedy in 56. Why did he do it? And he's of course, from a racist, radical right-wing family, and Marguerite was just a dirty racist and all that. But the Warren Commission ignored all that because it's 63 and everybody was, even up north. So, um,
well, you right here, when you're talking about the Beto and the fault and the grooming, you right here, I'll quote, there's no reason that Oswald would travel to the Soviet Union and masquerade as a communist other than to be used as an informer and a witness in the Eastland hearings or
yeah.
similar inquisitions. I think you're the only one who's writing about the James O. Eastland hearings, and you make that a big part of Bannister's operations, right?
Yeah, well, he joined the hearing. I mean, he did the investigation. If you look at the States Item newspaper from that period, what it was 56, 57, they had a picture of Bannister on the front page with James O. Eastland, the dirtiest congressman of all. and who was trying to save the South. He and Strom Thurmond. This was a second Civil War uh, because Kennedy was about to emancipate the black people of New Orleans and else in the South and ruin their segregated paradise.
Yeah. The Southern way of life.
Yeah, it's clear as the day is long. I mean, then they concocted this communist control act, right? As soon as Oswald came back to New Orleans, and this it's all set up. This is not, there's two plots. There's one regarding Eastland and his committee that Bannister and Leander Perez, who's a friend of Miltier, by the way, and then there's the plot to kill Kennedy. Well, they're not the same plot, but they used his immaculate credentials as a communist, in my opinion. I lay out the argument that Oswald was set up. Oswald was set up. They found a patsy, and he was willing to get set up because he was in my opinion, a super patriot. Because who would go through all this if they weren't? And of course, I've been through. He's named after Robert E. Lee, the original rebel leader, and all that stuff. Um, I didn't want to not report on Eastland's hearing because that was it. I knew it was it because I looked at the Times-Picayune, the state's items for
Mm.
years, every single page. I have them, and I'm going to put them online sooner or later. And you have to do that to catch all the minutia and what slips out of this thing. But it was Bannister's good friend, Kent Courtney, with Eastland and Leander Perez, um, who designed the original Oswald for the civil rights movement, or for the hearings, and they, take care of the local civil rights group, which was a thorn in their side. And it was used, I imagine, I don't know how this, I imagine that Walker said, okay, you've got this ready-made communist. It's kind of what we desperately need because the Civil Rights Act of 1963 is pending. The only way we're going to stop it now is assassination. And so you can see distinctive dates. I think it's August 20. He shifts from the secret agent of the segregationists in regard to the HUAC trials and all that, and he becomes now the patsy and everything after. But I see a distinct line on the 20th. Before he was going to be a professional communist, testify before the Eastland Committee, which Bannister did, probably testify like Bannister did in Arkansas and in Baton Rouge. So that he Oswald's now shifted. Forget all that because that's all for naught. All this communist playing. If Kennedy can pass the Civil Rights Act that he proposed on June 11th, 63, the battle is lost. The Second Civil War is lost without a fight. But if they can kill Kennedy, they got room to wiggle. They got Lyndon Johnson, who may not be like Kennedy, which uh, surprisingly or not, he was like Kennedy. He was pro civil rights, and we owe it to Johnson for the passage of that and the voting rights. But when we get into voting rights, and you think of Kennedy, go to the chapter on Oswald in Clinton, Louisiana. He's sitting there in a line of African American people who are going to try to vote for the first time in this register. Henry Earl Palmer, who Oswald met and tried to, no, said he tried to register to vote. And you get to see these things. Well, what's he doing in a Congress of Racial Equality? What? And people say, oh, he was just up there to get a register to get a job. Well, that makes no sense at all. you can't you can't register to vote like that. We all know that. So he was standing around just as show, like he always does. He puts himself out as bait.
Mm.
And he waits all the suckers in the newsrooms and everything. And he did that in Clinton. He stood outside. People are looking, what's that white boy doing in that line of no good communist civil rights people? And yeah, I just all came together fit like a glove. I mean, I know you have to know where to follow. And I have a scientific background, you know, 2 + 2 has to equal 4. You can't say, well, it's,
Yeah.
3, but forget about it's the reasoning here is so terrible. But so, I had to write on, well, Clinton, I had worked on that chapter years before, and I'd been to Clinton and I'd interviewed all those guys. In fact, I have them on videotape. I got the old man, I got uh, Reeves Morgan, who's the old man, and he's lying his ass off. And people who knew him, I talked to the district attorney of outside of Clinton at length, who was the same age, the same. He knew these people like from church. He knew them. I said, let me ask you. I hate to be a northern boy sticking my nose into this, but are these guys all Ku Klux Klan?
Mm.
And he goes, oh, yes, they were. And the most violent type. So that's the so-called Clinton, the white Clinton witnesses. But on and on, you see this pattern of this setting up this infiltrator to these left-wing organizations, civil rights organizations, but others too, professors. Bannister was sending spies into Lane and
College
all
campuses.
of these groups and the peacenik. If you look in my book, by the way, and it's a terrible photograph, but there's a photograph of picketing up in the Audubon Park, or is it? Yeah. And there's a guy who looks, to me, he looks just like Lee Harvey Oswald. It's in the book. Not a good, it didn't reproduce very well, but I believe, I can't prove it. I believe that is Oswald. If you want to look in the book on New Orleans chapter of Peaceful Alternatives. And Kent Courtney took him. Now,
Mm.
Kent Courtney was untouchable.
Hmm.
You look at the Garrison documents, uh, somebody would mention an investigator. These investigators were not like in Garrison's pocket and were not bullied. They were good police detectives and they went out and did their job. And Garrison, right in the margin, he is not involved in any way. Well, people I talked to from that 544 said he was there all the time at 544. He's got a shock of red hair. He's actually from Minnesota, so he speaks kind of a king's English. And Courtney was seen with Oswald. That's in the book. In Baton Rouge, where they were doing all the legislation to stop the Civil Rights Act. Um, Courtney, right after the phony fight with Carlos Bernier, I Bernier runs off after he got arrested and charged and all. He runs to Kent Courtney to get advice.